The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Lord,
To you, O Lord.
Jesus again in reply spoke to the chief priests and elders of the people in parables, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time he sent other servants, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet. My calf and fatted cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest lay hold of his servants, mistreated them, and killed them. The king was enraged and sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out, therefore, into the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The purpose of this gospel is to help us see the care, compassion, and love of God, even in dire circumstances. Jesus addressed a parable to those who thought of God as judgmental in order to open their eyes and the eyes of his followers after his passion, death, and resurrection. They knew understanding of God must also govern our lives. U.S. couples have recently begun to pay for their own weddings. For years, the bride's parents were expected to foot the bill for the wedding and the reception. In the time of Jesus, it was the father of the groom who threw the party. But no matter who is paying, weddings, at least before the pandemic, were often very big and expensive. In today's gospel, the groom's father, a king, pays the bill and is very concerned about who comes and who doesn't, for it is a matter of pride and money, and he is, after all, a king. But we must remember that not every king in every parable Jesus told in the Gospels represents God. Or at least not every king in every parable is acting in the way that teaches that Jesus has taught us to expect God to act. How is this king acting? In listening to any passage from Matthew's Gospel, we must always remember his audience. Early Christians who had been Jewish but have found in Jesus and the community that grew up around his memory a powerful revelation of God's love for all people. The king is not acting like God, but like a human king, careful with his limited resources, jealous of his image, and all too willing to prove to everyone that he is a boss who must be obeyed. Jesus and his community were trying to live out a new way of understanding God. Jesus addressed this parable to important officials and elders because he knew that they thought as his human king did. But they thought that God was about power and rules. When someone broke a rule, not showing up or not being dressed properly, they should be punished After all, early Jewish Christians were thrown out of synagogues. But the community addressed by Matthew would have remembered well that Jesus spoke of inviting the bad and the good alike. Suddenly, they realized that the reign of God that Jesus described, that his followers tried to live, is for everyone. Jesus has changed everything, or maybe Jesus has pointed out that God has always had a different way of thinking and acting than human rulers with human pride and greed. The prophet Isaiah, hundreds of years before Jesus, already described a compassionate God who wiped away the tears from every face. That image of God gives us a glimpse of how caring, how gentle, and how concerned God is with each of us. God is about loving and living in abundance, providing food and wine, juicy, rich food and choice wines. God will destroy the veils, the divisions between people that keep them apart, and God will destroy even death. How do we act on that understanding of a compassionate, caring God that Jesus and his followers took over from the best of the Jewish tradition? Paul wrote to the Philippians that he has learned to live in humble circumstances. Aren't the changes caused by the COVID-19 pandemic challenging us to live humbly, reflecting deeply on the meaning of life and of our actions? When we are fearful, we must remember that God is always our shepherd, even in the valley of death's shadow. God is with us in the worst of times, as well as at our best feasts and parties. God is the giver of all good gifts, from the gift of life itself to wisdom, curiosity, and the ability to change when that is needed. When we change well, we are thanking God for those good gifts that allow us to change and grow. We show our understanding of God's compassion, care, and love for us when we are compassionate, caring, and loving of others around us, especially the most vulnerable people and those most in need. Within the last 9 months, we have experienced an imposed Eucharistic fast. Now we give thanks for all of the times that we have been and are able to share in God's rich food and choice wine, putting on a wedding garment of gratitude.